Yashodanandana Raja Janaranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jai Vishvam Sabharaj Studio Srimad A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Om Vishnuvam Sabharaj Kachaya Studio Srimad Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada Ki Go Premanandi. Jai Jai Sri Caitanya Jai Nityananda Jai Advaita Chandra Jai Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Jai Jai Sri Caitanya Jai Nityananda Jai Advaita Chandra Jai Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Jai Jai Sri Caitanya Jai Nityananda Jai Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda I'm just going to read the Bengali, because not everyone is a proficient Bengali chanter. Prataparuja Raja aur Ojra Krishnanand, Paramananda Mahapatra Ojra Shivanand, Bhagavan Acharya Brahmanandakya Bharati, Sri Shiki Mahiti R. Murari Mahiti. Prataparudra Raja, King Prataparudra of Orissa, R. and Ojra Krishnanand, an Oriya devotee, Paramananda Mahapatra, of the name Paramananda Mahapatra, Ojra Shivanand, the Oriya Shivanand, Bhagavan Acharya, of the name Bhagavan Acharya, Brahmananda Akya Bharati, of the name Brahmananda Bharati, Sri Shiki Mahati, of the name Sri Shiki Mahati, and Murari Mahati, of the name Murari Mahati. Translation. King Prataparuja of Orissa, the Oriya devotees Krishnanand and Shivanand, Paramananda Mahapatra, Bhagavanacharya, Brahmananda Bharati, Sri Shiki Mahati, and Murari Mahati constantly associated with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu while he resided in Jagannath Puri. Purport. Prataparuja Maharaja, who belonged to the dynasty of the Ganga kings and whose capital was in Cuttack, was the emperor of Orissa and a great devotee of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. It was by the arrangement of Ramananda Rai and Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya that he was able to serve Lord Chaitanya. In the Gauda Ganodesha Deepika, it is said that King Indradumna, who established the temple of Jagannatha thousands of years ago, later took birth again in his own family as Maharaja Prataparudra during the time of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Maharaj Prataparudra was as powerful as King Indra. The drama named Chaitanya Chandrodaya was written under his direction. In the Chaitanya Bhagavat Adi-lila Chapter 5, Paramananda Mahapatra is described as follows. Paramananda Mahapatra was among the devotees who took birth in Orissa and accepted Caitanya Mahaprabhu as their only asset. In the ecstasy of conjugal love, he always thought of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Bhagavan Acharya, a very learned scholar, was formerly an inhabitant of Halisahar, but he left everything to live with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in Jagannath Puri. His relationship with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was friendly, like that of a cowherd boy. He was always friendly to Sarup Gosai, but he was staunchly devoted to the lotus feet of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He sometimes invited Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to his house. Bhagavan Acharya was very liberal and simple. His father, Shatananda Khan, was completely materialistic, and his younger brother, Gopal Bhattacharya, was a staunch Mayavadi philosopher who had studied very elaborately. When his brother came to Jagannath Puri, Bhagavan Acharya wanted to hear from him about Mayavad philosophy, but Swarup Damodar forbade him to do so, and there the matter stopped. Once, a friend of Bhagavan Acharya's from Bengal wanted to recite a drama that he had written that was against the principles of devotional service. And although Bhagavan Acharya wanted to recite this drama before Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Swarup Damodar the Lord's secretary did not allow him to do so. Later, Swarup Damodar pointed out in the drama many mistakes and disagreements with the conclusion of devotional service, and the author became aware of the faults in his writing and then surrendered to Swarup Damodar, begging his mercy. This is described in Adi-lila chapter 5, verses 91 to 166. In the Govardhana Deepika, verse 189, it is said that Shiki Mahati was formerly an assistant of Srimati Radharani named Ragaleka. His sister Madhavi was also an assistant of Srimati Radharani and was named Kalakeli. Shiki Mahati, Madhavi, and their brother Murari Mahati were all unalloyed devotees of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who could not forget him for a moment of their lives. There is a book in the Oriya language called Caitanya Charita Mahakavya, in which there are many narrations about Shiki Mahati. One narration concerns his seeing an ecstatic dream. Shiki Mahati always engaged in serving the Lord in his mind. One night, while he was rendering such service, he fell asleep, and while he was asleep, his brother and sister came to awaken him. At that time, he was in full ecstasy because he was having a wonderful dream that Lord Chaitanya, while visiting the temple of Jagannath, was entering and again coming out of the body of Jagannath and looking at the Jagannath deity. Thus, as soon as he awakened, he embraced his brother and sister and informed them, "My dear brother and sister, I have had a wonderful dream that I shall now explain to you. The activities of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the son of Mother Sachi, are certainly most wonderful. I saw that Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, while visiting the temple of Jagannath, was entering the body of Jagannath and again coming out of his body. I am still seeing the same dream. Do you think I've become deranged? I am still seeing the same dream. And the most wonderful thing is that as soon as I came near Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he embraced me with his long arms." As he spoke to his brother and sister in this way, Shiki Mahati's voice faltered, and there were tears in his eyes. Thus the brothers and sister went to the temple of Jagannath, and there they saw Lord Chaitanya in Jagannath, looking at the beauty of Sri Jagannath deity, just as in Shiki Mahati's dream. The Lord was so magnanimous that he embraced Shiki Mahati, exclaiming, "You are the elder brother of Murari." Being thus embraced, Shiki Mahati felt ecstatic transcendental bliss. Thus he and his brother and sister always engaged in rendering service to the Lord. Murari Mahati, the youngest brother of Shiki Mahati, is described in the Adi-lila chapter 2, verse 44. Om Jnana Chimadandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Militang Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasati Go Bhaktapinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. It's always important to remember the status of Sri Caitanya Caritamrita. In Bhagavad Gita, you are introduced to Krishna, but you don't get so much information about Krishna in Bhagavad Gita. He shows his universal form to Arjuna. But as for this mom, this unto me that Krishna always talks about, he doesn't give so much information about his forms, qualities, and pastimes. But the introduction is so important. You get to meet Krishna in Bhagavad Gita. Of course, if you are a more advanced devotee, you can see everything in Bhagavad Gita. Just like the illiterate devotee in South India. His spiritual master told him to read Bhagavad Gita every day. And so he would sit in the temple and turn the pages. But everyone was laughing at him because they knew he was illiterate. Lord Chaitanya came and had a different vision of this illiterate brahmana. He said, I see that when you're turning the pages, there are tears in your eyes. What's going on? And the illiterate devotee said, as I turn the pages, even though I can't read, every page gives me a vision of Krishna driving the chariot of Arjuna. And when I think about how the Lord becomes subservient to his devotee while still remaining achyuta, infallible, tears uncontrollably flow. So what did Lord Chaitanya tell him? He said, you are the real reader of Bhagavad Gita. In other words, it's not a matter of Sanskrit proficiency or literacy. Bhakti is the most important characteristic. An interesting point, because many of you know this Leela, is I like the way Srila Prabhupada tells it. He says, the illiterate devotee's spiritual master knew he couldn't read, but still told him, read Bhagavad Gita every day. Now, what do you make of that? Suppose you receive such an instruction. Oh, wait a minute now. This doesn't all add up here. But the illiterate brahmana tried to execute the order of his spiritual master to his best ability. And the result was, as Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Bhaktya mam abhijanati. Only by devotional service can I be understood. So the ones who were laughing at the illiterate devotee had nowhere near the realization that the illiterate devotee had as he turned the pages of Bhagavad Gita, even though he couldn't read. But he was getting the darshan of Krishna as Parthasarathi, the chariot driver of Arjuna. So Bhagavad Gita is the introductory text, the ABCs, but according to your spiritual depth, you can see various levels in Bhagavad Gita. And then you move to Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the graduate study. In Bhagavad Gita, Krishna talks about unto me, do everything unto me. But who is this me? That's where Srimad Bhagavatam comes in. It teaches you scientifically all about the name, form, qualities, and activities of Krishna. So then, why the need for Caitanya Caritamrita, which is described as the postgraduate study? In Srimad Bhagavatam, you find out all about Krishna's activities, Krishna's qualities. But what about love of Krishna? What are the characteristics of love of Krishna? To understand that, you have Sri Caitanya Caritamrita, which describes Krishna himself appearing as his own devotee and experiencing the topmost love of Krishna. So you may have heard one anecdote from Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, who said that if you happen to be around during the cosmic annihilation, when the whole universe is flooded, and you've got to swim for it. I think you may have had some floods here, yes. So, okay, we won't talk about the end of the cosmos. That's too far-fetched for most of you. We can't even think that this body is going to end. Let's speak that the cosmos is going to end. So, there you are in the Willumba, and the floodwaters are coming, and you've got to swim for it. So, making a more contemporary context of Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur's quip, you've got to take some Shastra with you. You can't just leave the Shastra in your house. The Shastra is your life and soul. So you've got with you Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, and Caitanya Caritamrita, and you're swimming. You escaped your house before the waters engulf it, and you're swimming, but you're having difficulty. Those books are kind of heavy. What can you do? So he says, first you let go of Bhagavad Gita, and you can keep swimming. Still, you're having difficulty swimming. What to do? All right, he says, you can let go of Srimad Bhagavatam. Oh my goodness, let go of Srimad Bhagavatam. And then, still having difficulty? Nope, never let go of Caitanya Caritamrita. Actually, Caitanya Caritamrita is Srimad Bhagavatam. Those of you who have read it know that there are so many Bhagavatam verses. Going deeper into the differences, and you have to be careful because they're all these books are purely on the spiritual platform. But in Bhagavatam, you're introduced very discreetly to Srimati Radharani. As we were saying the other day, her name is clandestinely mentioned once. Why? Number one, because it's top drawer secret. It's a top drawer secret subject. And number two, the speaker of Bhagavatam, Shukadeva Goswami, knew that if I say her name out loud, obviously, I'll lose it. I'll become lost in ecstasy and I won't be able to speak Bhagavatam. So to control himself, to control his own ecstasies, and to protect the confidential nature of Radha Tattva, he spoke in only a very veiled way about Srimati Radharani. But you go to Caitanya Caritamrita, and the glories of Radha Tattva are just fully presented as experienced by Krishna himself in the role of his own devotee. So there is nothing like Sri Caitanya Caritamrita. Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur would, when he was having what we might consider leisure moments, what would he do? He would read Caitanya Caritamrita. So it is the most exalted text in that it reveals the behavior of someone in the topmost love of Krishna. And that behavior is revealed by Krishna himself, taking on the role of a devotee feeling separation from Krishna. So I often mention another insight given by Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur about, and we can never hear this enough, that technically Lord Chaitanya is not an avatar. In a very general way of speaking, we say like the golden avatar. And of course, Rupa Goswami himself says, Namo Mahabharanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate. There's no more merciful avatar, no more merciful appearance of Krishna than Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. But actually, not simply technically, but in a more profound understanding, Lord Chaitanya is not an avatar. He is Swayam Bhagavan, the original full personality of Godhead, just as Krishna is Swayam Bhagavan. The two coexist eternally as the original Supreme Personality of Godhead. So that gives us a lot to think about. How does that make sense, though? Look, Krishna, are you this or are you that? How can both you and Lord Chaitanya be the original personality of Godhead? In other words, Lord Chaitanya is not an expansion of Krishna. He's not an incarnation of Krishna. He's Krishna himself in a acting in a dual role. So how does it work, that dual role? Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur explains like this. When Krishna wants to experience love of himself in separation, he appears as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And when Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu wants to experience being the supreme enjoyer, he appears as Krishna. So they both exist simultaneously. We're trying to understand this, of course, with our material intelligence, which operates through time and space. So we're accustomed to thinking, okay, step one, Krishna does this. Step two, Krishna does that. But you're talking about time when you do that. But Krishna is beyond time and space. So this is why we have an intellectual breakdown trying to understand. Krishna, how do you become Lord Chaitanya? And how does Lord Chaitanya become Krishna? And then you get even more confidential. You go even deeper. Not only is Lord Chaitanya Krishna, but he's Radha Krishna combined. Sri Krishna Chaitanya, Radha Krishna Nahayanya. Lord Chaitanya is the combination of Radha and Krishna. So then we read in the introduction to Caitanya Caritamrita that Krishna combines with Radharani. So you're thinking, well, when did that happen? When Krishna combines with Srimati Radharani. But there's no time in the spiritual world. So you can't calculate when did this happen. When is Krishna Krishna, and when is Krishna Radha Krishna, and when is Radha Krishna Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu? All that thinking is time-bound. So this is where this timeless domain of pure love of Krishna is where Caitanya Caritamrita is taking you. The very name, Caitanya Caritamrita, means the nectarian eternal characteristics of love of Krishna. The eternal nectarian characteristics of the life force, the supreme life force. So this is what you have in store for you when you read Sri Caitanya Caritamrita. And a devotee's life is not complete without reading Sri Caitanya Caritamrita. Of course, most devotees these days are thinking, well, if I could just have the chance to finish Bhagavatam, I would consider myself quite fortunate. Where there's a will, there's a way. Where there's desire, then possibilities open up in your life. There has to be this fire of desire to understand Krishna. And in this age of Kali, this age of darkness, Krishna is very difficult to understand. Even in India, there's so much misunderstanding about Krishna. Oh, that Krishna, the Hindu forest love god. Oh, that Krishna who started a war. Oh, that Krishna, the butter thief. So if there's even in India there's misunderstanding about Krishna, what to speak of elsewhere. Of course, when Prabhupada came to the West, he noted that the people outside India have a certain advantage amidst their ignorance and darkness. He said, in terms of understanding Krishna, they're all blank slates. Whereas in India, people have so many misconceptions passed down from generation to generation. My grandmother told me Krishna is this, Krishna is that. Just like I was giving a program once in Sydney, and at one wealthy Indian gentleman's home, and he invited his family members So I was speaking, and in the middle of my presentation, one of his elderly relatives interrupted me. "You're talking about Krishna? You don't know who Krishna is. I know. He's a cheater. He's a debauch. He's this, he's that." Right in the middle of the program. So I couldn't let him just hijack the whole program while blaspheming Krishna. So I had to take him on. So I pointed out to him that everything you have is Krishna's energy. And you accuse Krishna of dancing with others' wives. But who is that next to you? You think that's your wife, but no, she belongs to Krishna. You have stolen her from Krishna. So that shut him up. You've been with someone else's property. So later, when the program ended, his relatives came and excused. Please excuse him. We apologize for him. Anyway, he's Catholic. Wasn't even a Hindu. So we can see that even in India, there's so much confusion about who is Krishna. So Prabhupada came to the West, and no one knew anything about Krishna. In other words, they had no concoctions in their mind. And so that made it, in one sense, easy to give them the truth. Of course, in the Wild West, there's addiction to so many bad habits. That's another thing. But at least when it comes to understanding Krishna, there were no preconceptions. Krishna is this, Krishna is that. And so, for Prabhupada, it was an advantage. Now you may ask, why is there so much confusion even in India about Krishna? It's because they're trying to understand Krishna without going through Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu. And that fact makes life very difficult in this present day and age of Kali. Krishna is very difficult to understand without going through Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So this is why we have Sri Sri Gaur Nitai, Lord Chaitanya, Lord Nityananda. They're Krishna Balaram, granting access to Radha and Krishna by going through Krishna and Balaram's appearance as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Sri Nityananda Prabhu. So in Caitanya Caritamrita, you are fully immersed in the affairs of separation from Krishna as experienced by devotees. It is so intense that reading about it transports you to another world, transports you to beyond the material world. Just like Lord Chaitanya himself says. He says, if while I'm chanting Hare Krishna, if you see tears in my eyes while I'm chanting, you should know it's just a dramatic performance. It's only a show. Why? Because if I actually loved Krishna, I would have died long ago from separation. The fact that I'm still living shows I have no love for Krishna. This is Caitanya Caritamrita. And again, the point is made in Caitanya Caritamrita that it is very difficult to understand the behavior and actions of someone in ecstatic love of Krishna. Sometimes Lord Chaitanya did things that even his closest associates didn't understand. Just like in dealing with Chota Haridas. A very slight infraction, but he was banished by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And all the devotees went to plead with Mahaprabhu. He's your dear devotee. He just made a slight infraction. And Lord Chaitanya told them, if you keep talking like that, I'm leaving. And so, even devotees who Lord Chaitanya would consider his elders, like Paramananda Puri, they went and pleaded the case of Chota Haridas. But Lord Chaitanya said, you go on like this and I'm out of here. So Paramananda Puri concluded that your activities are so grave, we cannot understand them. And all the devotees desisted from this endeavor. So Chaitanya Charitamrita introduces you to ecstatic love. It's an exotic topic. You can't imagine it, anyone in this world of time and space and matter, someone coming up to you and saying, I have ecstatic love for you. You would think, this person's strange. We have no idea what is ecstatic love beyond, we have no idea what is any kind of love beyond the body and mind. But Chaitanya Charitamrita will educate you into what is real love, and furthermore, what is ecstatic love. And Lord Chaitanya, who is Krishna himself, is demonstrating the unlimited depths of ecstatic love of Krishna. And he's always surrounded by his associates. So in conclusion, these devotees mentioned in this verse and described more in the purport, they're essential to Gaur-lila, just as Krishna's associates are essential in Krishna-lila. And most of these devotees have a dual role. They're there in Gaur-lila and they're there in Krishna-lila. And as you all know, from looking at the cover of the first canto, volume 1 of Bhagavatam, Krishna has his abode at the topmost planet in the spiritual world, and so does Lord Chaitanya. So when you look at that artwork on the front cover of Bhagavatam first canto, volume 1, there you'll see Lord Chaitanya's abode right next to Krishna's abode. So in this way, you can further understand that both Lord Chaitanya and Krishna are the original personality of Godhead. All right, any questions, comments? Pratapana Prabhu, any comments?
Yeah, Lord Chaitanya appeared in the 15th century, and so anyone born therein after that has had the advantage of Lord Chaitanya's appearance. But what about the devotees that were born, or people who were born before Lord Chaitanya appeared? They had no opportunity to enter into the teachings and the pastimes and the higher rasas that are revealed by Lord Chaitanya. So how do we get our minds around that?
Well, you could give Madhavendra Puri as an example. He preceded Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in time, yet he's said to be the seed from which the tree of ecstatic love demonstrated by Mahaprabhu. He's the seed. Madhavendra Puri is the seed from which that tree manifests. So how did that happen?
What about before Madhavendra?
We can talk about Madhavendra Puri himself as an example. He had the super soul in the heart enlightening him with the nectar of ecstatic love of Krishna. So it's not that there was nothing before Chaitanya Charitamrita, before Lord Chaitanya's appearance. Some devotees had that realization, but it wasn't disseminated, it wasn't spread. But a few key personalities were enlightened in the heart about the truths of love of Krishna. And remember, so many of these great personalities come again and again to the material world. It's not their first time. So they're bearing eternal love for Krishna in its full manifestation. But for most of us, that full truth is only revealed at certain times. So you happen to be around right after Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So you can count your lucky stars or count your lucky japa rounds. Yes.
Can I respectfully add a little bit? Actually, just quickly, I remember you saying that it's your favourite book. In Sydney, you were asking what's our favourite book, and you were saying, pastimes of the devotees, and now they understand by the time on the Caritamrita. As you're speaking, I'm remembering before Lord Chaitanya took initiation, he was famous in Navadvip for being a scholar, for being a philosopher, for challenging everyone. But he wasn't seen as a Vaishnava yet. But there were Vaishnavas there who wished he'd become a Vaishnava, Advaitacharya and others. So they must have already had that mood. And then when Lord Chaitanya returned and had that mood, they were so happy. So it must have been there a little bit.
Everything has a time for coming out. As you're describing, when Mahaprabhu was famous as a pundit, a great scholar, wandering in Navadvip, challenging everyone, devotees would cross to the other side of the street because they knew he would pull them into an argument and ask them something. They would reply. He would defeat what they said and then take the other side. After he defeated them, he'd say, okay, actually, I'll take your point of view, and I'll defeat what I just said. So the devotees just avoided him. And devotees would start thinking and praying, oh, if Nimai Pandit would only become a devotee, he would be unstoppable. And Mahaprabhu would answer, may your prayers become true. May it happen one day. So yes, Westerners tend to think of time in a straight line because we're very much influenced, whether you know it or not, we are very much influenced by Christianity, a linear conception of time. Jesus came, okay, and then Jesus comes again in the future, and then that's the end. Whereas the Vedic presentation is cyclic. Time moves in cycles. What goes around comes around. So when we look at things through the typical Western stereotype view, it's point A and then point B. So either someone had the realization of ecstatic love of Krishna, or they didn't. There was nothing before point A. But in the Vedic presentation, things are always revolving. This is not the first time Lord Chaitanya appears. This is not the first time so many of his devotees appear. Once every day of Brahma it happens. So you happen to have been around, you're being around, during the first day of the first month of the second half of Brahma's life. And Brahma's life is 311 trillion years. So you happen to have taken birth in this lifetime just a short, you can't even say an eye blink from the viewpoint of eternal time, just a short time after the appearance of Lord Chaitanya. But Lord Chaitanya appears every day of Brahma, just as Krishna does. Once every day of Brahma. So things are revolving. So it's not that things just appear out of nowhere. Yes.
Thank you, Maharaj. You mentioned about how the devotees were petitioning on behalf of Chota Haridas. And we also hear sometimes devotees asked to pray for someone or out of their own, they care about that devotee, they pray for them. Like for example, some devotees might pray that my child can become a devotee, or parents and other devotees pray that may this devotee find a good husband or a good wife. But then how do you know that that is the will of Krishna and when to stop? Like for myself, I got married at a very late age, at 38. So you would think that he would have stopped, but then hope against hope, it did happen. So
That what would happen?
like I got married at a late do you know, been to Ecstatic?
Good things come to those who wait. Aren't you glad you waited? Okay, so what's the problem? But the prayer is, my dear Lord Krishna, if you so desire. This is what Prabhupada taught us, involving his illness and departure. My dear Lord Krishna, if you so desire, please cure Srila Prabhupada. So you can make your presentation, but always add that part, if you so desire. Otherwise, we're kind of implying that Krishna doesn't know what's best for us. So you're part and parcel of Krishna. You can make a request as long as it's prefaced in that way. Otherwise, you're making demands and turning Krishna into your order supplier. Even when you're chanting Hare Krishna, and this is the last point because I have to go to some meetings online. Even when you're chanting Hare Krishna, it's a great step up for us to realize we're saying, my dear Lord Krishna, please engage me in your service. But it's even more advanced to say, my dear Lord Krishna, if you so desire, please engage me in your service. Even in asking for service, we don't get up in Krishna's face and just, give me service, give me service. Although that's a very wonderful request, and certainly Krishna won't hold that against you. But as your affection, your priti increases, you realize that devotional service is Krishna's mercy. And so you're saying, if you so desire, please engage me as you like in your service. Of course, in the beginning, we're practicing karma yoga, which is you do something and then you offer it to Krishna. Krishna, just see what I did for you. But full bhakti is, before you do something, you request, Krishna, what's the best way I can please you? And then you offer that. So there's a very subtle difference between karma yoga and bhakti yoga. Full bhakti means you're not attached to what you do and you're not attached to the results. Karma yoga means you're attached to what you do, but you give the results to Krishna. All right. Hare Krishna, thank you very much. Always Prabhupada.